Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, and we are the Astrology Star Sisters. And today's topic is the new moon forecast for Gemini 2026. And I want to welcome my friend and colleague, Madam Simon, fellow astrologer. Welcome, Simon. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. How are you, Liz?
Good. It's kind of pretty warm here in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, but doing my best to stay cool. So we are going to start talking about the new moon in Gemini, and that is happening today. So Madam Simon is an archetypal astrologer, tarot reader, and visionary artist. You can reach Simon at iconalchemy.com. I'm an astrologer, author, an intuitive and tarot reader, and you can reach me at alightpath.com. And Simon has shared a piece of her art for the Gemini new moon, and I'll let Simon tell you about her piece of art.
Oh, thank you, Liz. So yes, actually, I started this piece actually back in under the Gemini full moon in December of 2025. And I sometimes do that with my traditional art pieces in particular, where I am very slowly working on them over time, and taking time to connect them to transits that fit with the theme. So in this case, obviously, it's a Gemini theme. And we've got a magpie there who embodies the Gemini quality of curiosity. And you could see he's got a little key in his beak because the Gemini full moon had a transit of Chiron that was going on. So that was why that key is there for Chiron symbol. But we've got both the moon and the sun in Gemini now. And so this is that combination of the external world and the internal world that we can see here, with both the consciousness of the sun and the unconsciousness of the moon.
Thank you for sharing your art with us.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Gemini. It's a mutable modality about evolving, meditating, adapting, distributing. The ruling planet of Gemini is Mercury. It's of the air element, thoughts, beliefs, communication, logic, and curiosity. And the mantra is I think. And can you share the keywords and cautions with us, Simon?
Sure. So the key words are ideas, information, multitasking, intellect, versatility, sociable, quick-witted. Some of the cautions are having black and white thinking, being superficial, glib, or hasty. Often we associate Mars or Mars ruled sign of Aries with hastiness, but Gemini can, because they're very quick-witted, there can be this tendency to have either the mind rush ahead of the mouth or vice versa. So.
I get that. So the new moon is today, June 14th at 7:54 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and I'm using charts for Seattle, Washington. And we have the sun and moon conjunct for the new moon, and they are sextile Eris and Chiron, and sesquiquadrate Juno in Aquarius. So go ahead.
So I like how this, comes back to that moon Chiron theme I just mentioned in relation to that piece of artwork. We've had this Eris and Chiron combination going for a while. They conjoined for the first time back in May of 2025, and then again in October of 2025, and had their third and final conjunction in Aries in February, when the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happened. And so now they are in this process of separating. Chiron is preparing to head into Taurus, where Chiron's going to be there for a few months this summer, and then is going to retrograde back into Aries again, and will remain in Aries for the rest of the year. So there's still like a relationship between Chiron and Eris going on, that, they're going to separate out from that and then come back again. Not quite conjunct anymore, but still having that effect on each other. And a reminder of what those themes are. Chiron, the so-called wounded healer, also a teacher, okay? A teacher of heroes, and a mentor to heroes. I find that particularly interesting with Chiron in Aries. And here, this is Chiron at the 29th degree, the last degree of Aries. So kind of trying to wrap up a bunch of Aries themes before heading into Taurus. So Chiron in Aries has been showing us, our wounding surrounding executive function, the ability to make, bold decisions. We see toxic masculinity themes have shown up here, as well as themes surrounding aggression. Okay. But also, concerns about identity, and our own ability to stand up and fight on behalf of ourselves and others. And when I say fight, I don't necessarily mean like getting pugilistic. Sometimes it simply means asserting oneself. Aries is very much about identity. Okay, who are we, and why does it matter that I am myself instead of you? Okay. And when you combine that with Eris is, of course, associated with discord, with kind of stirring the pot, setting up conflicts. But also Eris can very much be about pointing out hypocrisy and where things are not fair, not balanced, and where, in particular, where those who have privilege and power are not behaving themselves appropriately. Okay. And so you combine Eris and Chiron, there has been this loudness about where do we feel hurt? Where are we struggling to feel like we are acknowledged, and that we have a sense of competence, and that we have the ability to stand up for ourselves. So that has been an ongoing theme for the past year, little over a year. And with the sextile from Eris in particular, Eris is who's really tightly sextile this moon and sun, but also translating the light from Chiron, so that we have those Chironic themes as well. There can be a bit of feeling our oats. Willing to rock the boat a bit. Okay. But because it's a sextile, that's something that, if we're going to actually really tap into it, that's something that we would have to be actively making an effort to utilize Eris's, ability to point out uncomfortable truths, right? But also to assert ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, because Eris is not she's not a wallflower. She's not going to take stuff lying down. We also have this sesquiquadrate to Juno. A sesquiquadrate is a square and a half. So it has some of the nature of the square, the challenging, um, behavior of a square aspect. Okay, so there is again here, Juno relates to kind of the order of things. What is the status quo, but also in particular, what are the agreements that we have made and that need to be kept in order for our relationships, our institutions, our social fabric to stay together. And so when we see the sesquiquadrate from the sun and moon in Gemini to Juno in Aquarius, Aquarius is like systems of knowledge. Gemini, however, is this how do we learn and discern based on the data that we are getting. Okay. And so Gemini sorts through information very quickly. Okay. And is willing to talk about it. It's a talkative sign. Okay. Sometimes that means stirring things up on social media. Sometimes that means a bit of gossip. Okay. And those things can challenge that social order. Okay. Remember that traditionally Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So Juno in Aquarius is going to be more concerned with adhering to the status quo in a sober and disciplined manner. But at the same time, Aquarius is also where we start to challenge the status quo and say, okay, is this really what is best for all? Right? It's group oriented and it's oriented toward the future. So what is going to make the best future for everybody? Right now, Juno and Pluto in Aquarius are retrograde. Okay. And so there is a more internal sense of, questioning the status quo and the rules and the commitments that keep that going together. I should acknowledge that when I talk about Juno within the context of oaths and commitments, Diana Rose Harper is the one who really put that particular bee into my bonnet about how Juno behaves. A lot of astrologers simply traditionally see Juno as being about relationships. And while she is a goddess of marriage, she's married to Jupiter, she's the queen of heaven, there is more to her than just I'm the wife of the big cheese. Okay. And so arguably, she's what keeps the whole Olympian order going. Okay. Jupiter goes out and has affairs and does all this stuff that threatens that order. And Juno is like, occasionally she's going to come down on his case or whoever it is he's canoodling with. But overall, she is still the one who is making sure that the marriage continues, that their order, that the power structures, but also the community continues. Okay. It should note that she's also associated with childbirth. Now, in Aquarius is not known as a particularly fertile sign, right? It's an air sign being ruled by Saturn. It is kind of dry. Okay. And so when we see Juno in Aquarius, then if we're concerned about what do we give birth to, it's going to be what ideas and what systems we give birth to. Okay. So all of those things are challenging and being challenged by our new moon in Gemini here. But I would like to remind people that anytime you see a quote unquote challenging aspect, there is also this kind of potential for stimulation, for us to learn and grow and move forward based on trying to reconcile ideas or experiences that don't normally look like they're going to get along together.
Well, and make improvements and adjustments, reevaluate those commitments that we have. It doesn't mean that they go away, but maybe, you're just showing up in a different way. I'm willing to do this and no longer do that.
Right.
Okay, so we have two T squares here, one with Uranus square the nodes, and the other one is Chiron square Venus and Pluto.
Okay. So, a couple things about this. First of all, Uranus is an outer planet, and outer planets move slowly. So this aspect pattern of the T square of Uranus squaring the nodes, Uranus, quote unquote, at the bendings of the nodes, is something that we will be experiencing all month. We've been experiencing it, um, you know, uh, since the beginning of the month, and for the rest of the month, we'll be experiencing this. So Uranus can have kind of an electric feel, okay, can relate to technology, so quite literally electricity, um, but also, is concerned with what liberates us, what helps us to express ourselves as individuals, to feel uh, uh, free and able to embrace things that are unusual. Okay. When Uranus is squaring the nodes, however, that puts Uranus in this challenging position, this stimulating position to the karmic arc. Okay, the lunar nodes describe this path from where we have been to where we are going. We can certainly relate that to past, present, and future lives, but we can also relate it within this life to, what are the things that we learned so well from our family of origin that we now do them unconsciously. Okay, that would be the South Node. And then the North Node relates to what are we moving toward? What are we learning in this lifetime? And with the nodes, there can sometimes be a sense of, anxiety, uncertainty, because what is at the North Node end is so foreign to us, so unusual, and yet we have a hunger to learn it, to integrate it into the understanding that we bring from the South Node. Okay. So that we are learning the whole of the continuum between those two signs, whatever signs the nodes are in. Okay. So Uranus squaring the nodes then can add to the potential anxiety of the nodes, to the uncertainty, to, oh, there's something strange afoot, something in the air, and I don't know what it is. Okay. It feels electric. I feel restless. I want to do something different, but I don't know what, and I'm not sure how. Okay. So that's a really big theme and feeling that's going on this social and generational level. Okay. Those of us who have personal planets or points that are close to 2 degrees of the mutable signs are going to feel this more than other folks will. But this is a world transit. So even if we're not getting it directly, other people around us may be experiencing it more personally, and world events may reflect this. Okay. The Chiron square to Venus and Pluto. This is super interesting because this same T square, albeit in different signs, is going to be occurring around the time of the U.S. Midterm election in November. Okay, so we get a repeat of this. I don't think it's exactly the same. I think we're looking at something like Venus in Leo at that point, right? So it is Venus in Leo like we've got, but I think we've got don't we have like a retrograde from her or something like that? I think that's what's going on, because I remember seeing this in connection with the US midterms and was like, oh, this is interesting, right? Oh no, it's not the midterms. Never mind. It's the beginning of September. That's right. Wrong date. Yeah. In case you're wondering why I would mistake the two, it's because there is a big ol' astrological conference at the beginning of September. And so the dates I'm paying attention to. That's one of the important ones. Anyway, point being is we get a repeat of this theme. Okay, we get a repeat of this theme after Venus has done some of her retrograde dance. Okay, and so in particular, when we're looking at Chiron in hard aspect to Venus, that stirs up stuff surrounding relationships. Okay. Again, we got that theme of, what are our interactions with others? Pluto here is in a loose conjunction to Juno. So that does draw in some of that Juno theme work on a social level. Okay. And then with Chiron is, asking us to pay attention to what hurts here. Where do we feel like things might be futile? Okay. Where there is a difficulty that we don't know how to get past. And a lot of times when we are looking at chironic themes, we're looking at things that ask us to sit with what hurts for a little while, because we don't know how to deal with it, right? To not rush in and go, oh yeah, I know how to fix this. We don't. Okay. And sometimes the only way we're going to get through it is by enduring it unfixed, right? For quite some time. And then here's the cool part about it is when we can interact with others with similar difficulties, then we find that we can pass on information about what we've experienced and they can pass on information about what they've experienced that helps us to maybe not to fix the problem, but to have more acceptance of it. Okay. But with Venus in a hard aspect with Chiron, that's going to be more confrontational about the experience. And this is Venus, here at the beginning of Leo. Okay. And in Leo, Venus is expressive, right? I mean, that's very much about what Leo is about. It is ruled by the sun, which, what does the sun do? It shows up and shines. Okay. And so there is this this boldness that we see with Venus in Leo, right? The person who walks into a room and suddenly all eyes are on them. Well, that's great when we're feeling good about ourselves, but when we're feeling awkward, when we're uncertain of our identity, when we're not certain about the choices we're making, okay, all of those tied to that Chiron and Aries theme, then that's going to be a lot more challenging to have all eyes on us. When we make a mistake regarding the dates of a transit and we say it to people and then all eyes are on us, right? And aware of where we are imperfect. Okay. Now you combine that with Pluto. And this is Pluto in Aquarius. So that it's not just where are all eyes on our imperfections on a personal level, It's where all eyes on our imperfections on a societal level. Okay. Where is corruption and abuse of power showing up? Where um, where are the oligarchs getting too big for their britches? Okay. Um, and so since this is in this case it's two fixed signs and a cardinal sign at the end of its at the end of in that last degree, okay, about to head into another fixed sign. And then when this repeats, then we're going to get all that fixed sign energy will have been, gone through and re-emphasized via retrogrades, both directly and via retrogrades. So this particular configuration is giving us this opportunity to look at these themes both externally and internally because of both the direct and retrograde action. Okay. And to do so, over time with this repetition that's going to be happening. So, this theme, I find it interesting to be happening at this new moon, right? Because new moons are starting something. But then, we're going to have a repetition of this over this summer and into the fall. And so I would be very interested to see what starts now that we dig into more deeply in connection with these themes over the next few months.
Thank you for that insight. So we have a couple of minor grand trines, which form a cradle. So we have Venus trine Neptune, which those are sextile to Uranus, and then Uranus trine Pluto, sextile to Neptune.
Okay, so two minor grand trines that overlap. That in turn forms a cradle configuration with the opposition from Venus to Pluto, this applying opposition that we just talked about. Okay. Venus trine Neptune brings on the glamour. So that can be quite lovely. And in fire signs, that's not just like a passive glamour, that's an active glamour, right? So this can be actually really lovely for making some new fashion choices. Okay, on that personal level, like how do we present ourselves? Venus in Leo being big and bold, Neptune in Aries bringing the glamour, but doing so in this very active sense, even an athletic sense, right? And which is lovely for summer, the idea of like going out and doing stuff and being lively. Okay. And in that minor grand trine involving Uranus, then encourages us to try new things, okay? To do things that help us to free our spirits so that we can express ourselves in more exciting ways, okay? And then, of course, we've got the ongoing minor grand trine of all the outer planets. Plus, Sedna is there. She's a trans-Neptunian object. She's there with Uranus. And we've had that's been going on for the past, we're looking at a couple years now. So this is, big generational stuff that is inviting us to cultivate a new vision for how our society, for how our world works, right? Now with Pluto retrograde, that it makes the power portion, the power and transformation portion of the equation more internal. Okay, reviewing systems, reviewing what's gone rotten and needs to be composted, getting a sense of, which really I think of that as being like, where is that smell coming from? Right? When Pluto's direct, oh, we know where that smell is coming from. But when Pluto is retrograde, it's like, now, I gotta search a little bit and reassess. Maybe I thought it was coming from over there, but in fact, it's coming from over here. Okay. You combine all of that into a cradle configuration. 3 outer planets. Plus, there's actually a couple of TNOs involved in here. There's like multiple TNOs going on with this. The TNOs, the trans-Neptunian bodies, are these minor planets that are always like, when you combine them with the traditional planets, you get kind of subtleties of themes. Okay. So with Neptune, there is the question of a greater question surrounding our hopes and dreams. Are they worthwhile visions for the future, or have they been tainted by misinformation? Are they illusions and delusions? Okay. There can be, with Neptune, we've got Boris Cc Pabu. It's the binary trans-Neptunian object that's hanging out there. And that's very much about what are the little lies that we tell ourselves, that we accept and say, oh, this is necessary to keep things going, right? That we have to accept these little half-truths. Or outright fabrications in order to have things remain the way that they are. And in the context of that minor grand trine with the outer planets, then that is really questioning, should things remain the same or do they need to change? And if they're changing, are we going to tell ourselves more lies in order to make the changes palatable? or are we going to, be willing to examine those and lean into what is actually real and true? Sedna with Uranus is asking us to pay attention to where do we feel victimized, but also where can we transform from being victimized into reclaiming our personal power. Okay. Where can we learn and grow as a result of those difficult experiences where we have felt powerless? And that combines very well with Pluto, because Pluto confronts us with where do we feel powerful or powerless, and how are we using our personal and societal power? And in this case, is that turning out to be abuse of power? Currently, Pluto is, like I said, is loosely conjoining Juno on one side. On the other side is loosely conjoining the trans-Neptunian object Orion and the centaur Hylanome. And Hylanome can very much bring up for us, where do we want to give up? Okay. Hylanome is named for a centaur who committed suicide after the death of her husband. And so there is that caution there, where we see Pluto and Pluto themes, we can very much feel like, the big picture is something overwhelming and difficult for us to find and reclaim our own personal power in regard to. Okay. And Hylanome can bring those feelings of despair to reinforce that. Orion is another underworld god like Pluto, but is a benevolent kind of otherworldly figure who helps to, call us home, to bring us home at the end of all things. And so I feel like there is both this potential for hope and despair in that configuration. And so that's a reminder to us when we're looking at this. These are these big themes that are always going on in the background when we're looking at these outer planets. They are things that, one day we may not be paying attention to. And then the next day, if like something personal bumps up against it, it's, this thing is going on. I can't ignore it anymore. But there is this reminder also that these are the large forces that, yes, we as individuals may not know how to deal with them. And at the same time, we're all going through it. There is some measure of camaraderie to be had here, especially when we are experiencing these big social struggles, right? And so that opposition of Pluto to Venus ties that all back together again. The reminder that when we are expressing ourselves through Venus in Leo, we can do so in a way that is warm, that has generosity of spirit, that brings beauty and love and kindness and shares it. It's one of the most beautiful qualities of Leo, is that generosity of spirit. We could say, oh, Leo wants to be the center of attention. But from a Leo standpoint, it's like, I got this cool thing that I want to talk about and share and show. Okay. And that, going back to that T-square with Chiron, then is the reminder to, hey, tap into that sociability, tap into the fun and interesting things that we each want to share with each other in order to help soothe our hurts and not feel so helpless in the face of big stuff.
That's great. Okay, so we have a cardinal grand cross with centaurs and TNOs, and I'm gonna let you pronounce them because some of them I have a very hard time pronouncing, so I'll just let you jump right in.
Okay, thank you. I have difficulties with some of these as well, although I keep practicing. So I wanted to bring this up in particular because, yes, this is this ongoing configuration of these slow moving bodies in the outer area of the solar system among the outer planets. Okay, but I'm bringing this up with this Gemini new moon in part because Gemini is communicative and curious. Okay. And there is so much interesting stuff going on in our solar system that I think it's worthwhile getting curious about. Some of these centaurs and TNOs there was like this rush to discover these bodies within the past 20 years. And that means that as astrologers, we're still sussing out what do they mean? Okay. What are they trying to bring to our attention? And so I tend to look at these from the standpoint of, one TNO or two TNOs by themselves is not very exciting, but they are exciting in terms of what are they bringing to kind of the background sound of what the major planets are doing. Okay. And so we've had a T-square between centaurs and TNOs in Libra and Aries and Capricorn for quite some time. I first noticed this particular configuration back in December when I was working on that other piece of art there that we saw at the beginning. But what has been happening over the past few weeks, we had around the time of the last full moon, the full moon in Sagittarius, opposite the sun in Gemini, we had Venus turning this into a cardinal grand cross. And then Mercury in Cancer has just recently, again, triggered this as a cardinal grand cross. And in mid-July, we're going to have the sun doing the same thing as each one of them enters Cancer. and gets to this kind of middle of Cancer area that is triggering this cardinal grand cross. So in Aries, Saturn has been hanging out with this whole Aries Centaur and TNO crew. We've got as well as these goddess asteroids of Pallas and Vesta. They are conjoining. Okay, and I try not to butcher this one, but I do struggle with this one, so don't take my pronunciation as how it should be. Lelia Kuhonoa. And the TNO binary, Salacia Actea. And then more loosely, we have Manwë Thorondor, which is another TNO binary. In Capricorn, we have the Centaur Pholus conjunct the TNO Keowar, and more loosely the TNO Ixion. And then in Libra, we have the TNO binary Logos Zoe, the TNO Maki Maki, and the Centaurs Ripponos and Therius. And Therius just stationed direct yesterday. So about half of these are retrograde at the moment. And I feel like that's an interesting kind of, it's like this bass note going on right behind the melody of the major planets. Okay. And half of that is in that retrograde space. It's deep inside us. It's on that internal level, reconsidering things. But also there may be this kind of pulling back in those areas because of that retrograde feeling, right? And so even though we don't have, we only have one of the major planets, Pluto, retrograde, there may be a bit more retrograde feeling going on under the surface of things than we're being conscious of. Okay. There's also, because there are multiple centaurs involved in this. Remember what I said about Eris, where we're kind of feeling our oats and we're maybe going to be a bit contrary and want to stir some stuff up. Well, that's also what centaurs do. They get unruly and wild because they're half man, half beast. Okay. They are half thinking, half instinct. Okay. And, again, how does that relate to our new moon? This new moon, which is in a thinking sign, right? A young-oriented air sign that is communicative and curious and is oriented towards, sorting out, well, what is the truth and what is the lie? Okay, what are the actual facts? Are they something that I consider to be good or bad? There can be that black and white thinking, that danger of that, right? Well, that new moon is oriented toward the thought side of the equation, and yet, because the moon's involved, there's also what is unconscious, what is instinctual. Okay. And so what I definitely feel like we get a lot more of in connection with all of this is stories. What are the stories we are telling ourselves and others? Do we want to come up with some new stories? Okay, that could actually be helpful to us, both personally and on that broader societal level. Mercury, who has been the last planet to trigger this cardinal grand cross and is still separating from that, right? Still an orb. Mercury is very much about both the ability to tell stories, but also the ability to travel between the worlds, to travel between places that don't necessarily get along together, right? To go from the waking world to the dream world, to go from the mortal world to the underworld. Okay. And so I very much think there is this background theme here of what are the stories we are um, telling and where do they bring us? Okay. Lelia Kuhonwa is very much about um, i- i- the process of migration, specifically the migration of the Pacific golden plover bird. Okay. Um, and loosely translates as it flies until it finds land. Okay. And so I feel like there is this sense of, are the stories that we are telling going to help us fly and find land, find home, find a landing spot? Okay. What are the conclusions that we're going to draw by the end of this lunar cycle? Okay. And how are they going to help us then to find, oh, wait, the home of Cancer season that's coming up next? We're in Gemini season now. We're heading toward Cancer season very soon. And that is concerned with home and with family. What is our landing place? Okay. Um, in Libra, that Logos, Zoe, and Maki Maki combination, Logos is language. Okay. And Zoe relates to Sophia, the Gnostic concept of wisdom. Okay. So we can take that as how are we using language wisely or not? Okay. Um, and with Makemake is the Birdman of Easter Island and relates to this process of, kind of this ritual experience of going swimming across dangerous waters in order to fetch a bird's egg and bring it back to the society. And then the person who is successful at doing that becomes, the medicine person for the group who engages in ritual, again, these ritual searches for meaning and information that is going to help the society, help the culture. And Easter Island, of course, is most famous for environmental collapse. Okay, that had a profound impact on the society. And so where we see Makemake, there are these themes of how are we living in nature? Are we paying attention to the signs and signals going on around us when it comes to our impact on the natural world and its impact on us? And so, I think that this Cardinal Grand Cross definitely relates to the ongoing experience we have of climate change and what are we doing about it or not doing about it, and how can we both as a society but also as individuals trying to navigate these kind of intense times. How can we impact that? Well, one of the ways that we can make our world and our society better is by speaking up. And sometimes speaking up isn't going out and making a big protest or even talking to our Congress people, though I think that's a good idea. There's also simply the conversations that we have with each other. Again, going back to that Venus, Pluto, Chiron theme, we're all struggling through it on some level. Okay. How do we express camaraderie to each other? How do we share things that are going to help brighten each other's days while at the same time not being, hiding our head in the sand like ostriches? Okay. So, Cardinal Grand Crosses of any kind can have us feeling like we're pulled in all directions at once. When we're looking at it with these TNOs involved, I feel like it's this subtle sense of, which way do I go? Okay. And going back to our new moon themes, I think that which way we should go is very dependent on what are the stories that we can tell that are true and honest and um and that generate like the best ideas that can pass on stories that can, people can relay them, they can continue them, rather than having, say, a confusing game of telephone. Okay. um, where we can actually pass on information that is new and exciting and interesting and that motivates us to create a better future. Remember, we started out here with that T-square from Uranus to the nodes. What is going to feel liberating? What is going to feel exciting, but also not deter us from the path of learning and growth that the karmic arc represents.
Thank you. So now we're going to go on to the lunar phase family or gestation phase. It's uses the same concept as the 4 lunar phases for each month. New first quarter, full phase, and third quarter, and each phase lasts 9 months, and this comes from the work of Pessin. So this new moon starts the phase at 24 Gemini on June 14th. The first quarter will be March 15th of 27 at 24:51 Gemini. The full phase will be December 13th of 27 at 21 and 24 Gemini. And the third quarter phase will be September 11th of 28 at 19 degrees and 47 minutes of Gemini. Using different lunar phases of this one plays out over 3 years, then we have the yearly one that plays out over a year, and then we have the monthly ones. I like to look at the different ones because sometimes it takes a little bit more time to bring something into manifestation, and so it's really fun to follow these and work with them. And from my experience, some of them have a lot of meaning and other ones I don't tap into as much. And then the yearly lunar phase starts today, and then we'll have the Gemini full moon on November 24th this year at 2 degrees and 20 minutes of Gemini. So that gives us some lunar phases to work with. I want to take this moment to thank Madam Simon for joining me today, the audience that's watching live, and those that come back and watch at a later date. We appreciate you. And give us a like and subscribe if you like. And Simon's going to tell us about her Patreon page.
Thank you, Liz. Yes, so the artwork that we saw at the beginning of the show, that's something that I created in connection with this Patreon. I actually start these drawings and talk about the astrology connected with them and show the process to my patrons there. All of the behind the scenes work is stuff that they're going to see, but also that includes the astrological information, the more in-depth stuff than what I share publicly. And I also create custom astrological art for my patrons there, typically connected to their solar returns. And people get something personal out of it. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to see you over there. Also, I'm a consulting astrologer like Liz is. And so if you wish to schedule a consultation, you can visit me at iconalchemy.com.
And I do consultations. The best way is to email me at liz@alightpath. I have a newsletter and my YouTube channel. I have over 200 shows in the archives now, and a show or two a week coming out each week. So lots to go back and look at, and upcoming stuff weekly. I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine, an astrology software for Mac and Windows. And you can find out more information at astroperegrine.com. And Simon, it was such a pleasure having you on. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to having you back on in the near future.
Thank you, Liz. It was a pleasure to be here.
And we're going to say goodbye for now and see you next time.